Welcome to the Education Podcast, where it's all about helping people and organizations unleash their greatness. Hosted by me, Pasitawa Halfano, this Education Podcast features lively discussions.
When they share it, you see that they're beginning to feel empowered.
My heart, it's full of pride for me to be at Maitai Samoa.
As well as tips on leadership and business by some of the top minds and influencers around the world.
You don't necessarily need a degree these days. There's so many pathways to success.
Welcome to the Education Podcast. Welcome to our Education Podcast episode today. I'm excited to introduce our guest, Nettles Lamont, who is an accomplished managing director and chairperson with extensive international experience in business development. Now, she leads Quality New Zealand Imports Limited, supplying premium New Zealand products to India, and has been the executive director of Skills Highway, facilitating workplace upskilling. Nettles also heads Conquest Training Limited, specializing in workforce development. Now, her roles also include being part of Nelson Cricket Association and being the managing director of empowerment, and also a chairperson at Chumley. Oh my goodness. Nettles is also a Lincoln University graduate who excels in instructional design, executive coaching, and team building. She is also the CEO of Dublin Street Charitable Trust, supporting charities that aid vulnerable families. Nettles joins us today to discuss the critical issues of workplace literacy and numeracy in New Zealand. Thank you for joining us, Nettles. How are you?
I'm great, thanks, Pasi. Thank you for inviting me. It makes me feel tired just hearing that all that introduction. I'm not. Wow. I'm not sure I actually do all that, but I think I have over the years. So it's been a real journey.
Yeah, well, It looks like a massive journey, and I feel privileged as I read that out. I mean, I sit here and I see all these amazing hats and roles that you play, but I also wonder, how does she do it?
It's a matter of spinning plates and not letting too many things fall by the wayside. And sometimes things drop, but you've got to pick yourself up and have that growth mindset and keep going forward. And I think in whatever you do, you need to find the passion and the drive. And I'm really, really passionate about everything I do. So I do keep doing more and more.
Yeah, well, you're driven by a cause that's bigger and beyond yourself.
That's right.
I love that.
Yeah.
Bigger than life. So I'm really curious, before we get into our conversation, what motivated you to get into the space of learning and development, education? Where did this passion come from?
Yeah, it was an interesting journey to get where I am now. I left university and was an accountant initially, and I did that for a little while and realised I'd rather have my arm gnawed off by a crocodile than continue to do that. I love numbers, but I found it very pedestrian, and it really didn't suit my personality. I love people, and I'm driven, and I found myself sitting at a desk reducing specialists' tax but things like that, and I just didn't feel fulfilled in what I was doing. I had also done education papers at a master's level and thought, I'm really passionate about this. So I went to live in rural Japan for a couple of years, where I had my first child, and got involved in teaching English in a tiny little rural school. And that was great. I worked for the local high school and I worked in a kindergarten, and then someone asked me to set up my own gig. So I set up a private establishment helping children with their English. And then when I came back to New Zealand, around that time they were setting up the workplace literacy funds, and I thought, that sounds like me. I'd be really interested in getting involved with that. So initially I partnered with an Auckland company that was just getting into that space, and said, shall I set up the South Island for you? And they were quite keen on that. So that's where it all started. And after a while, I'm from a very entrepreneurial family, and I thought I can do this myself. So that was the start of Conquest Training. Alongside that, I got involved in helping charities because a friend who's a philanthropist asked if I could help a little distribute some funds in New Zealand, helping people who were ravaged by poverty or were challenged by family circumstances or charities involving children, and it really spoke to me. And I thought, yes, I can do that. And then I found myself in a governance role looking after the money. And I thought, jeepers, governance is wonderful. I love the whole strategic view of this. So around the time I started getting involved in workplace literacy and numeracy, I was also getting involved in governance. So I've had this dual career going in seemingly different directions, but they're very linked in many ways. So
I love that.
Yeah.
I love that. So you went to Japan and you taught there. So I assume you speak Japanese as well.
I do now a little bit.
Oh, that's awesome.
At the time, I didn't. So that was a learning by fire.
I love that. I love that. My sister lived in Japan for a couple of years as well, teaching English. So that's my little connection there.
Wonderful.
But that's pretty cool that your passion slowly unfolded. I mean, you went in, you did some accounting, finance, right? And then you found your sweet spot in education.
Yes.
So I love that. And now that you've got a business and you're being involved with government as well in this space.
Yes.
And so you're really involved when it comes to the community and with employees as well. Tell us a little bit about literacy and numeracy, because you said you came back home from Japan, you came from Japan to New Zealand, and you found drawn to this part here. Why was literacy and numeracy something that really stood out to you, especially here in New Zealand?
It's all about the people, and literacy and numeracy for all of us is such an important skill, and we all do it to a different level. And in the workplace, improving your literacy helps not only yourself, but helps your company, helps the community, helps your whānau, helps us all, and ultimately helps our GDP as a country. So my accountant's brain really loves that. So, yeah.
I love that. I mean, it's not like rocket science, right? If we're looking at from terms of the economy, right? If you want productivity, GDP, output, right? Increase that.
Yeah.
We've got to increase the efficiency and the skills of the people.
Absolutely.
Or the employees that work there.
Absolutely.
Right? So the more skilled they are, the more efficient and productive they are.
Totally.
Which means the more output that a business can produce, right? It's good for the overall economy. So, I mean, the government understands this, and they're investing quite a bit in this space.
Yes.
So like you said, when you came to New Zealand, they were starting to set this up, so they saw a need for it, right? Being in this space since, you've come into it, what are some of the things that you've learned, some of the challenges that you've seen, especially with employers that are quite common when it comes to like literacy and numeracy?
Logistically, it's not easy to put in a literacy numeracy program for an employer initially, because many companies have shifts, so they might be 24/7, 7 days a week, and it's really hard, especially in recessionary times, to pull people off the line to be learning. But in saying that, I haven't yet seen a company who is passionate about upskilling their people. They haven't yet seen a time when they haven't been able to work through this. It's a challenge, but it's doable. It could be small bites of learning over a number of months, or it could be half days over a number of weeks, and it's getting small groups of people learning together. And that mix of people from different departments can be a really good thing for company culture. Yeah.
What's your advice around getting people on board? Because you've mentioned there are a few challenges. I mean, obviously it's the whole schedule. Like, do we have the time for it?
Yeah.
Because we've still got a job to do. So I understand that perspective. But then you've got the other challenge around getting the buy-in and helping people recognize how important this is. Like, if you don't make time, it's going to cost our business.
Absolutely.
Right? So what's some advice around that in getting not so much buy-in, but helping people, especially employers, understand the need for it?
Right.
And not just employers, but also the staff.
Okay, so there's two really important parts to that, Pasi. There's getting the employer to really understand that. So right at the outset, it's so important to have good conversations with with the people right at the top, people who are sitting around the boardroom so they understand the challenges and the benefits of putting in a workplace literacy program, but also have conversations with the managers and the supervisors to get that buy-in. In terms of the employees, there can be hesitancy or fear at the start because people want to keep face and that they don't want others to see that they may be challenged in some areas around literacy or numeracy. So it's so important to be transparent at the start and unpack what a literacy program is about. Even going so far as to talk about professional upskilling or foundational upskilling, because the words literacy and numeracy still there seems to be a taint to them that it's a deficit. It's not a deficit. It's just an area of learning that we constantly need to be updating and evolving as we evolve as people and as society evolves. Literacy that's becoming absolutely important in the last few years is digital literacy. Now, 10 years ago, it wasn't a thing, but these days, most people in workplaces use a device or have some connection to a device or to email or to something in that digital realm. And again, it's keeping those skills current.
I love that. I love, you're right, around the whole stigma and the taintedness of the word literacy and numeracy. People are like, oh, got to go back to primary school here type of thing, right?
Yeah.
Or, you're signing me up for literacy. Am I dumb?
Exactly.
So one of the smart things I've seen other providers do, instead of calling it literacy, they call it communication.
Absolutely.
Communication skills.
Yeah.
So that's a little bit less intimidating.
Totally, yeah. And you said it, or was it like going back to school? People have a fear. School may not have been a good place for some people. And to show the program is nothing like school. It's fun, it's exciting, you learn some really interesting tips and tricks. And that's the thing. And then as people get brave and come along, their trust builds because they see it's so beneficial in so many ways.
Yeah, I love that. I've always believed that regardless of your age, learning needs to be fun. Not just for children. Doesn't matter how old you are, it's got to be fun.
Totally.
It's got to be fun.
We've all got to play. It doesn't matter what age you are. Absolutely.
I love that. And I think you highlighted an important part here, especially for adults. And, a lot of them might have a bit of trauma, like past trauma when it comes to education. I mean, I lacked a lot of confidence growing up. Education was hard. English was a second language at home. But I just remember in primary school, during reading and writing time, they would take me away from the class and I would get one-on-one support from a tutor.
Yes.
But even though that was a great thing, because I needed that, I was just behind.
Yeah.
As a kid, I saw them be like, what's wrong with me? Why are they taking me away from my friends? And why can't I be with everyone else?
Absolutely.
And I took that with me into intermediate, high school, and I just lacked confidence.
Wow.
And this is, but
How did you change that around?
Well, I held on to what my parents taught me.
Yes.
And it was ironic because my parents are high school dropouts, no qualifications whatsoever. But they said to us kids, all 7 of us,
Yes.
when you grow up, education, education, education. I want you to get a qualification, So that's what was instilled into us. So even when I went in to do my bachelor's degree, which should have taken 3 years, took me 4.5, I struggled.
Yep.
I struggled, right? But I finished it.
Wow.
Because my parents and how they raised me, And now I'm on the other side. Fast forward to today, right?
Yeah.
Like education has opened up so many doors for me.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah.
So many opportunities. So that's where a lot of my passion and my story comes from, is the way that my parents raised me. But anyway,
And how great now people seeing you, they see it, they can be it. You've walked that path.
Yeah, and I get this a lot. I mean, I was just telling you about how I was at Countdown buying stuff, and I caught up with a student who did one of our programs as education, and it was funny to hear her perspective. She's like, I saw Pasi and all that, and I was like, oh, it's easy for them to talk about home ownership. They're smart Polynesian, blah blah blah. but they didn't realize that actually we came from a hard background, very similar. We just worked our way there. We,
Yeah.
kept going hard. But at the same time, she goes, man, the program we went through, I'm so grateful for the education. You guys have changed our lives.
Wow.
Please keep doing what you're doing. And that's why we keep going.
great.
That's what keeps us driving and gets us out of bed in the morning is people tell us they need us
It's
and
so
we're helping
real.
them.
Yeah.
And it comes from a place like we can walk.
Yeah.
We've been there. We
Yes.
can sympathize,
Yeah.
sympathize
Yeah.
with you. So anyway, that's...
Gives me goosebumps. That's what it's all about. Absolutely.
Yeah, absolutely. That's what it's all about,
Yeah.
right? So I love that. In terms of like coming back to the employers, like how important, if you talked about being in the same room with them and talking to the right people, how do we connect literacy and numeracy training to actually business outcomes?
Right.
Because we know at the end of the day, they've got a job, they've got KPIs, the business needs to make money to put food on the table. Like, how do you connect the dots there?
So conversations at the outset around finding 4 or 5 things that the company wants to see improvements on. It could be reducing wastage, it could be reducing conflict in the workplace, it could be increasing productivity, could be reducing churn. There are degrees of commonality across the spectrum with employers. There's always something that they want to improve, that literacy and numeracy, if it's taught well in a program, will help with. So finding those at the outset and measuring at the beginning and then at the end to show that change really is a game changer for employers. Many will say, jeepers, why weren't we doing this years ago? Makes such a difference. Absolutely.
I love it. I mean, at the end of the day, that's the bottom line. Anything that improves that productivity, reducing waste, being more efficient, right? How can we do more with the resources that we have, and just aligning that? So, what are your tips and advice around the program? So obviously, yes, you got business outcomes. Yes, we've identified that you've got needs, right?
Yeah.
What are your tips around building a program that would actually help them?
Right. So it's important to make the program bespoke to the employer and the business that they're involved with. It can't be something off the shelf because different companies have different needs, and find out what's important and what's going to work for the employer and the learner. Where it's really important to assess the learners at the start to find the levels of literacy, so any program that is written is at the right level. Also, there are things in order to get funding. There is eligibility criteria, so we need to make sure that we're hitting the right straps when it comes to eligibility for people. Then you build the program. Many programs have maybe 8 to 10 modules, and there is a lot around communicating and different ways of communicating, the way we write, the way we speak, the way we interact with others, the way we interact with digital literacy, with devices, and the way we communicate that way. Also around numbers. Numbers are so important. It might be learning about budgeting. It might be transferable financial literacy, understanding about a mortgage, understanding how loans work, how your tax system works, understanding about the basics of money. It's amazing how many people have really struggled in this area, and in my experience, the many hundreds of programs I've seen, the financial literacy modules are so loved by everybody because there's always something you can learn.
Yeah, well, especially when money touches everything. We need money for rent, money
Yeah.
for this. I mean, we come to work in the first place so we can make money to
Totally.
provide these things. But what I love about that, especially with the modules and literacy and numeracy, and you mentioned this before, it's not just about reading and writing. These are skills that we need just every day. like whether it's managing our money,
Yeah.
whether you're going to shop and like how do I make sure I make the best choice when I'm shopping and looking at the pricing and also looking at like the instructions on the packet, like what am I eating? What are the ingredients in here? You know, it's all of those things that help us have a better lifestyle.
That's right, and the ripples go out. So you're looking at ingredients on something, you think, jeepers, that's not so healthy, and you're making a better choice, and so that's having a positive impact on your health. Or you're suddenly confident to go home and read to your kids at night, or join the school board of trustees. There are so many benefits. It's just absolutely heartwarming to see the way people grow in confidence and just absolutely flower into their communities.
Yeah, I love that. You know, bless my parents. I mean, we grew up, I can't remember even one time they read a book to us. It's because English wasn't their first language.
Yes.
But I see it in my wife and how she does it with our children. And our children just love reading. They just love books. And we have this thing in our home now, like, Dad, can I get an ice cream? Dad, can I have a treat? Dad, can I watch this thing on your phone? I'm like, yep, that's 3 books. You're going to read 3 books. You're going to read 4 books. You're going to read 2. But the thing is that they don't feel forced. They love to.
Yeah, it's not a punishment. It's a joy.
Yeah.
Great.
Yeah. But the thing is, we're trying to cultivate like the love for learning, the love for reading, the love for this.
Yes.
Right? It's just a normal thing.
Yeah.
You know? But you mentioned a good thing there in terms of the ripple effect and the domino effect when we have training at the workplace and how that can improve people's lives back at home.
Totally.
Their well-being and all. And that's what it's all about, right? And I loved how you talked about like, look, how do you know if you've got a great training program? Yes, you can have all these modules, but you got to have a way to measure it, right? And we talk about the base metrics, assessing like where's the starting point? What are the current needs at the moment? And then measuring it and making sure that we're actually improving it.
Absolutely.
Right? It's not just about training a program and making them feel good.
Yeah.
It's actually progress, improvement.
Yeah.
So what are some tools that people can use to help understand the needs of the literacy and numeracy of their staff, like employers especially?
Okay, so a very commonly used tool is the LNAT tool, which is available to employers to use with their staff, and that consists of a reading assessment and a numeracy assessment, and there are various other assessments, but it's the reading and the numeracy assessment that most employers like to use with their staff, and that can be either via an online tool, which is an adaptive tool, so as somebody logs in and answers a range of questions that are multi-choice, the questions will subtly get harder or easier depending on the answers of the people. So it always feels achievable for the learner. And there are a couple of ways that happens. It could be a snapshot one, which is about 15 odd questions, or a more extensive one, which is about 26 to 30 questions. The assessments are just part of the journey of understanding in terms of assessment. Most providers that work with employers, they'll have a conversation with the in-work learner and just find out how they're communicating and what their goals are, and they'll set a learning plan, an individual learning plan, and that's really important to know what goals the workplace learner has, because you can lead a horse to water, but you can't make it drink, right? So it's really important to align what the learner wants to learn alongside what is available in terms of the learning modules.
Yeah, I love that. And you've mentioned this, and this is a tool that's quite commonly used. And
Absolutely.
if you need help, the LNAT tool,
Yeah.
The literacy and numeracy assessment tool.
Yes.
There's some providers out there who can help with that, especially.
Absolutely.
So, and the cool thing about that tool is it's really scientifically proven. Right,
Absolutely,
there's a
yes.
strong base behind it. It's
Yeah.
been used for years.
Yes.
But I guess yes, you've got that tool, but I guess you could also look for signs in the workplace.
Absolutely.
Right, there are some signs like accidents.
Yeah.
People who might be avoiding training, taking days off whenever there's training scheduled. Might be like looking at wastage, it's higher than normal. So those are all like, I guess, things that employers can look for that indicate like, look, maybe there's something with the literacy and numeracy that we need to be concerned about.
Yeah, and in areas like health and safety, if there are people that are constantly having to ask their supervisor to fill in documentation, that's another sign as well, because someone may not feel confident to write up an incident report, for example. So the benefits in terms of health and safety are absolutely huge.
Yeah, so just imagine that, a workforce, and you're just leveling them up with their literacy and numeracy, how much benefit for them personally and also for the business. Can you highlight, like, yes, there's some benefits and ROI of improving the literacy and numeracy of our people. What about the flip side of it? What is the cost? What are the consequences of not supporting the literacy and numeracy of our workforce?
Oh, the costs are huge. There are workplaces where churn is just crazy. They're constantly having to hire people. People don't stay long because their literacies aren't of a level that they can stay in that workplace. The culture can be really poor because there's high conflict with people not understanding or getting angry or making errors because they're not understanding what they need to be doing in the workplace. The costs are huge, and they're sometimes hidden, but often it comes back to a literacy challenge that hasn't been addressed.
You know, the other thing that makes me think about as well, in terms of the employers are a key stakeholder when it comes to delivering this, you know, and I've seen the relationship or the partnership where you've got the employer, then you've got the provider, then you've also got the staff who are doing the training. And I just want to make sure that the employers, as they're going through the training, that they're also involved and they're part of the journey as well. And I think about like parents, you know, the school, you know, the teachers, and then I hear this time and time again. I want the parents to be more involved in the students or their child's learning.
Absolutely.
So it feels like they're all going on a journey.
Yeah.
What's your advice around that, and how can we make the employees still feel like they're a part of this? It's not just like the providers are coming in, delivering it, and then, you know, how can we involve them in the journey?
If that learning is delivered in a silo, it's not effective. Everybody has to feel part of and involved in the learning. A good example I saw recently was King Salmon. A big workplace program was put on there, and the management got very involved. And in one of the modules, the learners went up and had a morning with the senior leadership team, and they sat down and were part of the decision-making process around some of the things that were going on in the workplace, and it was such a game changer. The senior leaders got to hear the opinions and thoughts of people on the floor, and equally the learners, they felt heard. And it's amazing some of the great business ideas that came up in those sessions and were even implemented as cost-saving measures in the company. Absolutely amazing.
What a great example by that organization there. And I love, so you're basically suggesting, or the idea of, you can have modules or some activities or tasks where the leader is involved.
Yeah, absolutely.
Part of the learning.
Be part of it, yeah. Get amongst it, absolutely.
I love
such a rich program when everybody feels part of it.
That's some great advice, great example there. Thanks for sharing that. The other thing that I've been thinking about is sustainability, right? Like, we're teaching them these skills. We don't want it to feel like it's a drive-through, like you've done a 20-week course. How do we make sure that the things that they're learning is sticking? It still remains long-term.
Yeah, and I think that's really part of becoming a career pathway. So it's learning to learn, it's trusting that you can do this, and once you get the bug, it's so organic. You want to learn more, you want to go on a career pathway in your workplace, you want to get out there and learn new things because you can. That invisible barrier or that Jimmy on your shoulder saying, I can't do this, I'm useless, I'm dumb. It's gone, and that learning becomes organic. For employers, it's really important to grab that opportunity and that joy that you see in your staff and give them the opportunities for further learning, and so people feel supported in an ongoing way.
I love that. I love that. And especially I love that part where you involve the leaders and you try and make that like this is a normal thing. Like what we're trying to create here is kind of like a new type of culture.
Yes.
You know, like learning is everyone. It's like my leader as well can be part of my learning.
That's right.
And even when the provider's gone, it's still there, the relationship, the thing that's been conditioned there. I love that. So if there's a lot of great questions here that you're answering here, and I appreciate that. I'm pretty keen now because we're a provider. Education is a provider, and we work with a lot of employers and that, and we've got a great team of facilitators. If we're speaking to the facilitators or the training providers, what are some tips and advice that you can give when it comes to supporting employers or staff with literacy and numeracy? What are some tips or things that you like to see in that space?
It's really important to make sure the staff, the learners, feel valued, and the learning is a process, and it's to build people up. It's not to divide. That is so important. It's really important to celebrate the learning at the end of a module or at the end of a course, to have a graduation or have something to really celebrate the change. That's so important. And also there's little things within the modules, like have a magic wand session, for example, where the in-work learners can come up with good ideas that can improve the company, because often the senior managers, the ones that are often making the decisions, they're not out there on the factory floor or the shop floor seeing exactly what goes on the whole time. And the learner may very well have some great ideas that could benefit the company, benefit everyone, be cost saving, be better for the environment. It's amazing the things that we see come up when people are given the license to actually speak their truth.
I love that. Pretty much creating a space where people can kind of contribute as well, and making it fun. I love that whole the magic wand. I've never heard that one before. Yeah. Do you have a favorite topic that you like to teach? Or
oh wow, I love all of them. That's right, isn't it?
That's the right answer.
Yeah, that's the right answer. Recently, I've seen a lot of modules on workplace mental health and well-being, and that's wonderful. We're in difficult times, and it can be really, really difficult for people. And I've seen some just amazing changes in people when they've just learned some things about looking after yourself, and it's okay to have a bad day and to be able to talk to somebody else, and with blokes it's all right to have a yarn to your mate if you're feeling a bit low, and you don't have to keep it to yourself. And as part of a workplace communications program, seeing that and seeing the changes in some people and the stories people will share, just absolutely amazing, and just it brings people closer together and helps again that workplace culture. If they want to share, and if they don't want to share, that's okay. But again, it's being able to touch people in a community, in a workplace, who otherwise may not go out and ask for resources or help, and just again giving tools and tips and tricks that can help them and help us all.
I love that. So well-being is one of your favorite ones, but also, like you mentioned, is one of the biggest needs that we've seen unfold in the past couple of years as well. It's so important.
Yeah.
You know, especially when employees never used to think about well-being. You know, are my staff happy? Are they healthy? How are they mentally? How are they emotionally? But now it's a priority now, and it's great that you can have initiatives like literacy and numeracy that kind of still lift the well-being of the staff, which is great.
Yeah.
You know, that's awesome. If we kind of stand back a little bit and look from a macro perspective, because you've been involved in government as well in this space, so it's great because you've the grassroots. It's all started there, and now you're at this level where you can kind of influence from a big scale. What are you seeing from the top level? And I guess if you were to wave a magic wand,
Give me the wand.
here you go, wave a magic wand and just change something. What would it be?
Wow. I would like that all employers who wanted to improve the literacies of their staff have that opportunity. At the moment, there are rules and regulations, as there should be, but it can be quite challenging to jump through the administrative requirements, and it's always a difficult thing for a private company to have that private-public partnership to put in a program that is funded. I would like to see that process be more seamless. I would love to ensure that ongoing, very long-term, we keep funding in the sector because it is so important. We hear the government of the day, whomever that is, talk about the need for a skilled workforce, and there are always industries where we don't have enough skilled people. It all starts with foundational literacies, and it's utterly important that we keep funding that area. I would also like to see an outcomes framework developed so we can have a quality community of practice, so we can see the programs that are getting the most goals and hitting it out of the park, and we can all learn from that and make sure that we are continually improving what we're doing, because at the end of the day that's going to benefit the learner and that's going to benefit our companies that we work with.
Excuse me there. Yeah, the government are a very key stakeholder, important key stakeholder when it comes to empowering and enabling literacy and numeracy amongst all workplaces, right? And they play a big part. So, I mean, there are criterias to access the funding from the government.
Yeah.
And I understand they have a criteria that's there for a reason.
Yes.
Right? But at the same time, I guess the question I should probably ask is there anything that the government can do to kind of help support a little bit better in this space?
There are people who aren't eligible to access this training because they are on long-term visas. They're not permanent residents, and that's a little bit of an anomaly. Many employers will ensure that these people get the opportunity and fund them to be part of programs, but I think for it to be more widely available to greater groups of people is important. The second thing I see, for example, the employer-led fund it's seen as seed funding, so employers can access it once or twice, a couple of times. For industries with high churn, I think as a sector or the government could be more clever in working out ways where some entities can access a degree of funding, maybe not to the level of the seed funding, to ensure that further generations of people or iterations, especially in industries with high churn, that those people receive some type of training. Now, it's important to note here that to access the training, employers need to see it not as a one-off, but to change their practices in terms of training to build literacy and numeracy into their natural way of being. But I think it would be good to have a little bit more support down the track, just to make sure that it's hitting the mark for the learners.
I love that. Is there a reason why the funding is, I guess, not gate-kept, but why it's set up that way? Because I do understand there are quite a few people or businesses that miss out because they don't fit for example, 20, 20 minimum. Is there a reason why 20 is the number and not 15?
I think it's a legacy system, and it's been like that for a long time, I should say. I think that it's something that the government is aware of. There's a couple of funds. There's the EWLN fund, and there's the wider TEO fund. And it's the EWLN fund that you have to have a minimum of 20 learners. And in the future, we may see those funds changing a little bit or joining. Or at the moment, there has been a lot of public cuts in terms of staffing. So these things take time, and it's really important that for everybody in the sector that they have a voice and they make suggestions, because you are right, there may be an employer who has maybe 18 or 19 eligible people, and they miss out on that employer-led funding. And so it's always good. There are rules, but it's always good to have a conversation with the funder, or have a conversation with Skills Highway, or to see, is there another way of working it through for small entities that have just a few learners, through PTEs, through TEOs. It's possible to train those smaller groups of people, but for the employer-led, currently you've got to have at least 20 people.
I love that. So we're heading towards the end of our podcast, and you've just shared so much. I've learned so much just listening to you. I guess for an employer and a provider who are working together to put through an application and a proposed program, what's something that they need to consider, that when the government looks at it, they're like, yes, this is a good program and it's most likely to get across the line or get approved funding for? What are some things that employers or providers need to consider?
So it's if you're an employer that is employing higher numbers of Māori and Pacifica staff, that's a target group. If you're in a geographical area that's outside of the metro areas, we are trying to support the regions as much as possible. I should not say we, that's a royal we, the government. In terms of putting in the proposal, it's really important to give us an accurate as possible straw person of how the program may look. It's important for the funder to see that those conversations have been had with the employer around what is the need and how we're going to measure that need and how we're going to address it. And have you thought through the logistics? We have to make sure that eligibility is there. We can't, for example, have level 5 people with degrees going through a literacy program, because that doesn't make sense. If employers are unsure, before putting in the proposal, reach out and get some help, get some advice. And it's really important to put your best foot forward so you've got a good shot.
Nice. It's comforting to know that when an employer and provider are putting something together, they can get some feedback for the actual submission of it. Absolutely. As well. Because at the end of the day, you guys are there to enable not the disabled.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I love it. Well, look, you've been so generous with your time and your knowledge. Like I said, you're a person sitting here who wears many hats and who has a lot of influence as well. So I just want to thank you again so much for your time. If there's one takeaway that you want our listeners to get from our conversation today, what would it be?
Love learning, get into it. If you're a workplace learner listening to that or want to be a workplace learner, talk to your employer about possibly putting in a workplace program. Reach out to Pasi, reach out to anyone. Ring up the TEC and find out how this can happen, because at the end of the day, we are a community, a supportive community, and learning is a wonderful thing, and it helps all of us. It helps us as individuals, it helps our companies, it helps our whānau, and it helps our community.
I love it. What a beautiful way to end the podcast. Again, thank you so much, Nettles Lamont, so much for your time.
Thank you, Pasi. It's been an absolute pleasure.